Hello, my name is Michelle Benegas. Today I'm going to be presenting moving from content objectives to academic language objectives, or ALOs. I created this presentation with Amy Stolpestad. The first step to creating an ALO, or an academic language objective, is to name the content objective. Some sample content objectives would be, first of all, from social studies, 9th grade, I can explain how per capita consumption patterns differ between developed and developing countries. An example from 3rd grade, a science lesson, would be, I can explain how bats are different from other mammals. Now, in your school, you may use the term content objective or learning target. The term can be different from school to school, but the idea is the same. You may also start your objective differently. You might start with students will be able to. You certainly have the flexibility to use whatever frame is used in your school here. Let's move on to the next step. Step 2 of writing ALOs is you need to decide which academic language to teach. We do this in one of two ways. The first way is noticing. Teachers can tailor language instruction to students by asking themselves, what do I notice about my students' written or oral language that needs attention? The second way that teachers can decide which academic language to teach is through forecasting. Teachers can forecast what language to teach by asking themselves, what language do students need in order to successfully engage with the content? They can do this by looking forward at whatever content is coming, taking a look at the text, whatever they will be reading, the tasks, any formative assessments that they'll have, and the tests, any summative assessments that will be coming. The next step is to choose a function. The function drives the academic language objective. A function is how language is used to carry out cognitive processes, such as those described in Bloom's taxonomy. This language needs to be explicitly taught. Here are some examples of function words. Analyze, argue, categorize, compare and contrast. You can read the rest. Often, the same function can be used in the content and academic language objective. So, if your objective for that class or your learning target for that class already starts with, I can describe or I can compare and contrast, go ahead and use that. You want your language to grow out of your content needs. The other thing that I want to focus on here is that I listed examples of language function words. Some of the function words in Bloom's taxonomy are cognitive functions and not language functions. So an example I might give you would be find. Find the shape that is a parallelogram, and if I have to find that shape and circle it. Or solve, and I need to solve an equation. Those are cognitive processes that certainly could have language added to them, but on their own, they are not language functions. So we ask that when you're choosing a function, always choose a function that has language embedded in it. Step 4 is to identify supports, specifically language supports. Here are some examples of language supports that you could offer to your students. A word wall, labeling pictures or graphics or items in the classroom, working with a partner or in a small group, the internet. If you take a look at the list here, you'll notice that all of these supports help students with language. So when you're offering supports, make sure that those are language-specific supports. Step 5, decide on the level of academic language that you're going to teach. Are you going to be focusing on the word level, otherwise known as the brick level, where you're looking at phonology, how words sound, semantics, what words mean, or morphology, word parts? Or are you going to be working at the sentence level, also known as mortar? This is syntax, or how words fit together, grammar, if you will. Finally, you might be looking at the discourse level, or buildings. Discourse refers to text type, so noticing how certain text types are structured or organized. It also refers to pragmatics, so knowing how and when to use different types of text. Step 6, write an academic language objective. You can use one of the frames that we provide here. You'll notice that there are spaces for all of the areas that we've covered thus far. We'll go deeper into each of these now. So for word level academic language objective practice, you'll notice the following examples. The first one, I can explain how bats are different from other mammals using vocabulary such as herbivore, frugivore, and insectivore with the support of sentence frames. I can explain how bats are different from other mammals using correct stress for words like herbivore, frugivore, and insectivore with the support of an audio recording. And I can explain how bats are different from other mammals using the suffix ivore for words like herbivore, frugivore, and insectivore with the support of flashcards. You'll notice that all of these ALOs attend to different areas at the word level. Which one do you think is looking at phonology, for example, how words sound? And it is the second one. It is the one that's looking at the stress for words. Which one do you think is looking at semantics or what words mean? It is the first one that's looking at vocabulary. Finally, the last one is looking at the suffix ivore, so we know that that one is morphology. If we look at sentence level ALOs, we have the following two examples. The first one is, I can summarize how bats contribute to pollination using ordinal numbers such as first, second, and third with the support of a word wall. I can compare per capita consumption of India and Canada using comparative language such as greater than, less than, as blank as, with the support of sample sentences. These attend to different areas of syntax, but in both cases, the area of syntax was identified. In the first, it's ordinal numbers, and in the second, it's comparative language. Finally, discourse level ALO practice. The following are two examples. I can describe how bats disperse seeds in an organized oral presentation with the support of a cycle diagram. And I can compare per capita consumption patterns in a research paper with the support of a bank of sentence starters. What is important to keep note of with working at the discourse level is that you identify a text type and the norms of that text type. The first example provides the text type of an organized oral presentation, and the second is a research paper. There is a lot to say about integrating ALOs into your instruction and into your assessment, but for today we'll leave you with this. We encourage you to integrate as many of the 4 modalities as possible into your instruction. The 2 input modalities or receptive modalities that we have are listening and reading. And the 2 output modalities or productive modalities that we have are speaking and writing. We know that for cognition to take place, it's important for people to engage in all 4 of these modalities, but it's doubly important for language development. So when you're thinking about the lesson that you're about to teach, I encourage you to ask yourself, how much of that lesson will my students spend listening, reading, speaking, and writing? If you fall low in one of those areas, that's all right. Keep it in mind for the next lesson that they need to be spending more time in the other modality. That is all for today. Thank you very much.